Districts 1, 3, and 6. We are joined by people here in the auditorium at Indiana University South Bend, but also on Facebook Live and on Zoom live stream. We are also making a recording of the event with a video camera that we'll have posted up online. So there will be several ways for people who were unable to attend tonight to actually watch the footage after this event. I'm Elizabeth Bennion. I'm Campus Director of the American Democracy Project, and I'm Professor of Political Science here at Indiana University South Bend. I also serve as Director of Voter Services and Education for the League of Women Voters of the South Bend area, and those are our two sponsors for this evening's event, along with some volunteers from the Political Science Club. What we will do this evening is to hear from candidates in all three districts. We will keep their responses together so that you can literally compare them side by side with their responses, but we will alternate who gets the question first and who speaks first within each district. The questions that we'll be asking will come from you. Some of you submitted questions through the League of Women Voters website. Other of you have submitted questions here on note cards, so we'll try to get to as many of those as possible this evening. The candidates will start with opening statements where they can tell you a little bit about themselves and why they're running and what qualifies them to serve. And then we will move into the policy-based Q&A or other questions that voters may have. Finally, they'll each have 30 seconds to close and tell you why they deserve your vote on Election Day. Our timekeepers are aware, probably the back here. Can you hold up one just so the candidates can see them? So they are pretty, very large and legible, hopefully. You can all see those, so that will key you on 60, 30, 10, and time. That makes it very nice for me as moderator because I don't have to cut you off, or at least I don't have to cut you off as often. So what we will do is we will start with opening statements, and we are going to go from left to right. I don't mean that ideologically, I just mean stage left to stage right. I would not presume to rank them in any other way. So we'll start with District 1, and we will hear first from Karl Nichols.
Good evening. How are you doing tonight?
Good.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the American Democracy Project for hosting this event. It's more than a no-show events. And I'm glad you guys did it to give us all an opportunity to speak to you. Why am I running? You know, I've lived in the 1st District all of my time in South Bend for 14 years. I've lived in the same house. And I've seen over that time an increase in violence, an increase in shootings. Matter of fact, in the front of my house, I have 2 bullet holes from a shooting that happened in July about 4 or 5 years ago. And over the last 7 or 8 years, I've seen that, an increase in that. And rather than move, because I did buy property out of the county, rather than move, I wanted to stay and address the issues and to be a part of the solution as opposed to running away from the solution. I have 2 young sons, a 19-year-old and a 12-year-old who are being raised in that community and in our district, and I want to continue to show them not to run from issues, but to direct them and help impact change. And what qualifies me? I don't think there's a leadership class, a degree, or anything that you can take to qualify you to have the awesome responsibility of municipal government. But what I want to do is bring in my experience of being a community activist and a worker in the street to bring that same spirit of programming to municipal government to be able to bring forth community voice and not have a come to us design, but a go to you design. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear next from Tim Scott.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Dr. Bennion, for having us. Been in South Bend for 25 years. My wife and I bought a vacant house at Forest and Portage Avenue, and we made it our home. We got married at St. Pat's Church, and we had all our relatives come here because South Bend is our city, and we love it here. My wife found a way to give back, working for the NNN, and when I ran for council, that was my goal, is to give back to the city. And to go out into the district and do good work. You know, the time up here is not guaranteed, so What we want to do is be able to do as much as we can possibly do. And I feel good about the things I've done in 8 years. While I've been on council for 8 years, I've also been the president of the county council for the past 5. So there's leadership there. So my goal is to continue to improve our neighborhoods, continue to work with our city, continue to work with our city government to make sure that we get things done, like RSVP, rental verification safety programs. So with that, we'll talk more about it, but thank you, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Next, we hear from Sharon McBride from District 3.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Also would like to thank the American Democracy and also the Women of the Voters in the Political Science Club. Why am I running? I believe that everyone deserves decent quality of life. And that means no matter your race, gender, economic status, that we all deserve the basic necessities of quality of life. And that's whether infrastructure, whether decent housing, and all of the amenities that we need to feel safe. We all need to have the right to live in public and safe neighborhoods and be secure in that. And since I've been on council, I've done just that. I've started and hit the ground running. I've worked with the homeless population prior to me being on council for about 2 years. I serve on the SOAR Neighborhood Association Board. I'm also on the 466 Works Board, and I am the Director of Community Corrections. So one of the reasons why I would like to continue with the work is that I have gone to every neighborhood association meeting. Most of them I have attended consistently with the businesses associations, and I have engaged and listened to the neighborhood. And through that engagement, we have accomplished a lot. There are a lot of sidewalks and infrastructure and things that we have done in a short amount of time, and I want to continue to do that work.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the District 6 candidates, starting with Jason Banicki.
Thank you, Dr. Bennett, and thank you to the League of Women Voters, the American Democracy Project for putting this on. And thank you to everyone here for coming and everyone who's tuning in online. So just a little bit about me. I'm a graduate of Indiana University down in Bloomington. Also attended classes here at Indiana University South Bend. Prior to that, I was a graduate of Washington High School through Navarre and Harrison. So I'm a 4th generation resident of South Bend 6th District. So that's where my roots are, not just my roots, but my entire family come from there. Beyond just school, I've also worked 5.5 years as a corrections officer here in St. Joe County. I've spent 6 years in sales management, which is absolutely a results-driven business. I intend to bring that kind of results-driven mentality to my time on the council. Also beyond that, I spent almost a decade working in family business right here in South Bend. And in the last 5 years, I've attended many council meetings, park board meetings, budget meetings. I think that puts me in a unique position for a first-time candidate to hit the ground running if elected to the 6th District to make a real impact for a neighborhood that I called home my entire life.
Thank you. And finally, we hear from District 6 candidate Sheila Niezgodski.
Thank you, Dr. Whitman. My name is Sheila Niezgodski, and I have lived in the 6th District now for 20 years with my husband, Baker. We'll be celebrating our 15th anniversary here coming up in July. I'm an Army veteran, so I served during Operation Desert Shield Desert Storm. I worked at Ducombe Center for 5 years under the direction of Charlotte. I'm currently the community services manager at Niezgodski Plumbing, which is a union shop that was established in 1922. While my husband is in session, I run that business. I'm extremely excited to begin my candidacy for the 6th District. I deeply believe that a statement from the County Council, which is their mission statement, South Bend, to make certain that our city government is always responsive to the needs of its residents, and that the betterment of South Bend is always our highest priority. I pledge to live up to this statement to the best of my ability. I'm running for the South Bend 6th District seat because I want to serve our residents. If elected, my voice on the Common Council will be one of reason and common sense. I will help local businesses grow. I want to look for opportunities for good paying jobs within our district, and always keeping in mind it's all really about our families and our neighborhoods. When we work together, we work together, I feel that everyone knows that progress will come. So that is why I'm running. I really want to serve, and I love the district that I live in. Thank you.
Thank you. We will go next to a question about your top priorities. This question says, what do you see as top council priorities in the coming term, and how will you work to accomplish and pay for these priorities? And so we will start again with Mr. Nichols.
Thank you. So when you look at the top 2 priorities, I think if you deal with one, you can address many. If you look at just the tip of the iceberg and you see crime, what is causing the crime? You have to look at that. You have to look below the water and take a deep dive and look at what causes that. So there's poverty, there's joblessness. There are so many issues that lead to the crime. So if you address those issues, the crime will decrease. So I don't want to worry about crime being a top thing to do right away. What I want to do is look at the intentional and equitable community investment in the community. Making sure that not just downtown is taken care of, but that money starts to come out into the rest of the communities, into the rest of the districts, and really makes a difference and makes an impact. And you involve your residents with that change. Right now, it's really a top-down design. Hey, this is what we're going to do. Hope you like it. And really bringing in more of the communities to be a part of that. There's money for everything out there, but if we address those other issues that deal with crime, with safe and affordable housing, and you deal with community investment, then you solve some other issues as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scott, 90 seconds.
Yes, I would agree. Investment in our neighborhood, that's the first thing I will continue to do is, if I'm reelected, is work on our neighborhoods. It's one thing that I've done on council since day one is invest back into our neighborhoods and push the city budget to invest back into our neighborhoods. We've done things as far as infrastructure. You know, curbs and sidewalks programs. We have almost 2.7 miles of new curbs and sidewalks in the first district. We have new lighting because Light Up South Bend initiative that myself and Karen White started. But we got to do more. We got to look into the housing issues because part of it is not only housing, but also with jobs. You got jobs and you got housing in the right infill, the crime is going to be less within South Bend. Also, the big thing in the first district is public safety. And we have to look at it from code enforcement and also from community policing. We need police officers out of their car more, out walking the streets, and we need to engage people as much as we possibly can. Now back to the infill on housing. We had 1,000 houses in 1,000 days, and part of that program, there was 300 houses refurbished, but there was a lot torn down. We need infill. The one thing that I'm looking to push with community investment is infill with 2-family flat, 4-family flat, tiny homes where people can have equity within those homes and have homes that are part of their income that isn't going to kill them. And then with a 2-family house, they can have part of it and also rent the other half.
Thank you. Ms. McBride.
My top 2 priorities, number 1 would be continue to work with the homelessness. I've been doing that prior to me being elected or appointed to the council, and that is my passion, and that is something that I will continue to fight for. We've had some delays again this year with weather amnesty. We have had some difficulties with permanent support housing. And one of the things that I am committed to continue to do is work with administration and council to make sure that we have public-private partnerships to make sure that we find the permanent housing that they need, that they also have the wraparound services that they need as well, whether it's veteran services, whether it's for housing, whether it's for addictive services, and things of that nature. That's the first thing I would do. The second thing, I'm also the director of St. Joe County Community Corrections. Gun violence is prevalent in our neighborhoods and in this city. Although the crime rate has gone down, in 2016 there were 102 shootings. It went down last year to 78, and this year we're at 8. That's still too much. And one of the things that we need to do, since we are the fiscal body that controls the budget, put resources into our public safety officers that we currently have and make sure that they have the resources that we need to continue to promote public safety, engaging the youth, and getting at them at an early age. Thank you.
Thank you. One hear next from Mr. Banicki.
All right, so my top 2 priorities. Very first thing is I would work with the Department of Community Investment to make sure that we're attracting companies here that pay a living wage to our residents. As James Carville once said, it's the economy, stupid. And when you start looking at where a lot of our violent crime, and not just our violent crime, but we also have a property crime rate that is double the national average as well. That is indicative of our 43% working poor rate in the city of South Bend. So if we work to attract quality companies that pay a living wage, it will work in our favor to reduce violent crime, and also reduce property crime as well for those citizens. And we got to make sure that we're doing it in a way that focuses on the residents that already live here. It's one thing to work on attracting new residents, which we need to help meet our budgetary goals, but we also need to make sure we take care of those who've been here and will continue to live here for years. The second thing I would want to work on almost immediately is calling for an increase of spending on paving our roads. Over the last 8 years, we have not spent all of our money for road repair on fixing the roads. We've gone from a $1.4 million surplus in the highway fund to over an $8 million surplus in that fund. Surpluses are good, but not when they're at the expense of the quality of our roads. I think anybody who's driving around outside right now can tell you that we need to seriously improve the quality of our roads. Right now, we're paving an average of 20 to 30 miles of road a year. South Bend has 2,200 plus lane miles of road to pave. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Niezgodski.
For me, it'll be attention to neighborhoods and affordable housing. I kept getting a question asked when I'm out walking, what are you going to do about affordable housing? Well, I think we should be looking at block grants to offset the cost of updated utilities. When you have an empty lot and you need to bring in sewer and water to even consider building a home, you're talking a lot of money to do that. And if there's an investor that's only going to pay $5,000 for that lot, he's certainly not going to want to spend $20,000 or $30,000 to put a home on there, and then build a house on top of that. So to me, it's like, what are we doing about incentive for developers to lower that cost? And working with community development corporations, what are we doing with them to get ideas, to get a plan together, to say, in this neighborhood, the average income is about $38,000. So what type of home can we build there for residents that will fit within their budget so that they don't have to move, be relocated, but can feel that they can live in their same neighborhoods where their mom lives down the street or their cousin lives a couple streets over. That's how it was where I lived. We had a lot of family that lived around our area, so I don't think we should be disturbing our neighborhoods in that way. So for me, it's about getting feedback from the community, making sure we're keeping residents engaged, and I believe that we should tap the local universities as well for local support on giving us a good direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question actually is a nice segue from what you just gave us a nice segue, and you will actually respond first to this question. It says, what are your plans to improve your district as it relates to infrastructure and community improvement? And can you revitalize neighborhoods without causing gentrification?
I absolutely believe that you can. First of all, like I said, we have not tapped, I believe, all the local resources we have. The University of Notre Dame, St. Mary's College, and what about a CDC corporation? What about if we formed one of those right for our district, for the 6th district, to look at ways to keep our neighborhoods intact? And I mean building homes, and building homes that perhaps if you have somebody that has a business, and it's a small business, they could run that business out of one side of it and raise their family on the other side of it. That used to be a very common practice. And I think that that's something that we could bring back, show the diversity of the 6th district, showcase that. We have started that with the Western Avenue corridor, which is very important. But I believe now it's time to branch out, and you can do that, engage residents, get their feedback without having to dislocate residents.
Thank you. Mr. Banicki.
All right, so one of the things when you talk gentrification, it gets a very negative connotation, but you want to do gentrification without displacement at the end of the day is really what you're looking to do. Because when you're talking gentrification, you're talking neighborhood improvement. which allows people to increase their values of their home, which allows them to build generational wealth. So we can't just continue to use generation as a negative when gentrification without displacement should be the goal. Speaking of community development corporations, we just had one launch this past weekend over in the 2nd District, right across the street from the 6th District. So that would be something I would look to partner with them to bring them right across the street and work with us. You know, they're on Iowa Street right there across from Harrison. There's no reason they need to be confined to the 2nd District when there's a lot of work to do in the 6th. You know, affordable housing is very tricky in this city because a lot of times when we do it, we partner with the South Bend Heritage Foundation, and what they consider affordable housing is $650 to $850 a month rents, when you're still talking about an average citizen income of around $21,000. So you have to work to raise the incomes before you can make any housing affordable for a developer in this city, in most neighborhoods. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to have this cycle of subsidized housing, and it's only going to one demographic. So we have to fix the underlying issues before we can fix all of the economic issues.
Thank you. Ms. McBride, improvements in infrastructure and in community improvement without gentrification.
Well, I think some of the things that we have started with infrastructure in the 3rd District, we had a lot of projects going on, one of them being Light Up South Bend. There were over 115 lights that were part of that program, as part of the lamp post program in the 3rd District. So that's part of the things that we're trying to do to help out. We had a lot of curbs and sidewalks that were repaired, and also the revitalization of our Randolph Park and Revere Park. We have a lot of things that are going on well, that we have small businesses in the area now that will keep people in the area, like Lane Lab, the Zen Cafe. We have 466 Works, who have built 2 homes and in the process of looking to build 4 or 5 more. I met with the Latin Chamber of Commerce and discussed buying property and some of the fill-ins that we have to retain residents in the neighborhood as well. So there are a lot of exciting things that are going on in the 3rd District for us to make sure that we keep the neighbors in the neighborhood and attract more people to come and stay.
Thank you. And now we'll return to District 1 and to Mr. Scott.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we can improve infrastructure. That's one thing that's been near and dear to my heart in the 8 years that I've been on council. You know, 2.7 miles of new curbs and sidewalks in the 1st District, 357 new lights in neighborhoods. This isn't along major streets, but this is in our neighborhoods. So there's ways to help people out. The other thing is a community development financial institution that South Bend is looking at right now. We've invested $75,000 into that program, where people who are underbanked can get loans for housing, can get loans for businesses, and we need to expand that program. And we're going to be having meetings on that very shortly to roll that out within South Bend. You know, I agree with Mr. Critchell. Banicki is we got to help build jobs too. You know, we have 497 new jobs within the 1st District that are paying better, but some of those are out farther than people. So transportation and some of the Bloomberg grants that we have on transportation, we need to build on those as well. You know, you build wealth as well as build within the neighborhoods to make those strong. So there are things that I believe in, and I've been doing with the city to make sure that, you know, there are places within the city that people aren't going to spend money on curbs and sidewalk, but it makes it walkable, it makes it better than what it is. And you look at like the infrastructure that they've done down Diamond, it's made a big difference.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
The 1st District is very large, and many of those improvements that you've heard about are in one area of District 1. The curbs and sidewalk program is wonderful, but when you can't afford your portion, you're left with a raggedy sidewalk and no curb. How can we help you get those curbs and sidewalks if you can't afford your portion of it? And so that isolates some people, and the goal is to interact with everyone in the district, include the entire district, and not leave people out that are in the district totally. You know, one of we talked about the 1,000 houses early in 1,000 days. There's so many opportunities in the 1st District, but we have to make sure that we reach out and involve everyone. City government can't do this alone. It was mentioned about a CDC. I just currently finished helping the paperwork for an organization to do their CDC within that area, within the district, so they can begin doing some of that work. Because if we wait till we're elected officials, we're going to be too late. The work has to happen now. It's been happening and continue to just grow the district. But you have to be intentional about including everyone in the district. Intentional about reaching out and intentional about providing resources to those who don't have resources to help build that. Jobs are important. Transportation is important. It's a daunting task, but we have to be intentional about facing those realities.
Thank you very much. The next question has to do with tax increment financing districts, or TIF districts, and it will go first to Ms. Niezgodski. It says, do you think TIF spending and or tax abatements have helped your district? Specifically, how have they helped? Or, if not, what would you change?
Well, TIF districts are a means of capturing tax dollars for a district. And I believe that it is part of that is within the 6th district. I'm not sure exactly where the boundaries of it are, but I do know that it's a useful tool for investment. And if those monies are going back into the place where they're being drawn for, and it benefits the community that is they're drawing those dollars from, I'm all for a TIF district, as long as it stays within the area that it's being taken from.
Mr. Banicki.
So TIP spending is always one of those hot button topics, and it's a very tricky topic. There are currently 2 TIP districts in the 6th district. One just very much on the very edge border on Western Avenue, which has been used very, very wisely to pay for some great infrastructure improvements on there, and they're working their way farther down that this year. The other one is over on the south side, and that one's actually paid off all of its bonds. So now we have this extra TIP revenue there that we can use to fund infrastructure improvements within those TIP boundaries. I think that's absolutely another opportunity for that to impact our neighborhoods in a positive, meaningful way inside the district. As for tax abatements, it really depends on how they're used. You can look at one of the projects that's breaking ground now, which is the downtown Martins and apartment complex, where it was a 10-year tax abatement. 5 of those years are 100% abated. 5 years of those are 95% abated. And that's primarily going to be for housing and a few jobs. I say that's not a good use of our tax abatements because it puts a lot of investment and a lot of hope into one project. However, just inside of the 6th district, a few weeks ago, the council approved a tax abatement for a company called Grace Steel. It's going to be moving here from Bristol, Indiana. It's going to bring with it 20-plus jobs that pay over $40,000 a year. And it's getting a 6-year tax abatement that's phased in over a 6-year span. That's how you do a tax abatement. It brings high-paying, quality jobs into a district that needs them, and you phase in the taxes so it allows the business owner to invest over $2 million inside the district.
Thank you. We'll go next to you, Ms. McBride.
Thank you. Yes, the South Side has TIP funds, and I believe that we have been, although not an expert in TIP and being new to the area, we do have TIP in our district, and to my knowledge, we have been using them wisely. My knowledge of what TIP should be to the council is making sure that we are taking the incremental increase and make sure that we're being fiscally responsible in our spending. I know that with the zoo, for instance, we have utilized some of that funds and got the abatements, and that has been a great project because it has saved the city's money for allowing them to use some of the TIP dollars in order to become, to have a renovated zoo that would be attractive into the region and attract people here. So I think that tax abatements and TIP are definitely a good investment as long as we are making sure that we are issuing them and being fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars in regards to how the abatements are used, and that we're getting a good return on our investments.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
Again, coming on the council, when I first got on, redevelopment would sit back and kind of wait for whatever project to come along and kind of sit back and go, well, we got to sit on money until something good comes along. This council and myself pushed them to say, no, you got to do more. You got to get bang for your buck and actually be proactive. Either go out and recruit for business or put it in an infrastructure where it can be used. So the West Side TIF district has been expanded. But what it's brought so far is $168 million in investment in the last 8 years on $25 million that we put in either tax abatements or in TIF money in First District, which has led to 497 new jobs in 8 years. That's nothing to sneeze at, but we can do better. You know, when the last time we voted on a little expansion of TIF district was to come down Wilbur, come down and look at the Portage-Elwood corridor and work on that. That's something that's coming up. The day after we did that vote, I had Scott Ford out there, and we were actually going over the Drury site, going over the Portage Avenue-Elwood corridor, the business node there, and demanding that money needs to be put into that. So everybody knows what's going on with Drury right now. I've had conversations where there will be announcements soon that TIF dollars will be helping to clean up that mess when the owner isn't even stepping up. So you got to have a return on investment on your money when you do it. And if it's a good return, that's what we need to do.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
So it's taken me a while to learn about TIF districts, but what I know, when I don't know something, I go to the experts and find out about TIF districts. And what I learned is that the council isn't really responsible for what the TIF money goes to. We can help guide that conversation, but we're not responsible. But we need to be responsible as elected officials to make sure that we use that money responsibly. We talk about abatements. Who's following up on tax abatements to make sure that the companies that are coming in are doing what they're supposed to be doing with that tax abatement? Who's following up with that? Who's holding that business accountable? I think it's very great. If we hold them accountable, then that's great. I fully support it. As far as TIF money goes, I know some of them, they expire in 2035. If we wait that long to use those dollars, we've lost a generation. We need to stop having conversations about using the money, use the money, improve the district, and then when it's time to release that, we'll be in a better place.
Thank you. The next question will go first to Ms. McBride of District 3. It says, do you have neighborhood associations in your district? Would you like to increase that number, and what role do you see for such associations?
Absolutely. The 3rd District has strong neighborhood associations. River Park is one of the oldest neighborhood associations. I am consistently present at the River Park, River West, in contact with them as well. I attend the River Park Business Associations. I serve as treasurer on the board of the SOAR neighborhood associations. I've reached out and I'm in contact with Hope and the Miami Neighborhood Association. When I first was appointed to council, we started back. That neighborhood association in Miami had depleted, and we have revitalized and re-energized that neighborhood area over that area. So we are continuing to grow, and we are always welcoming to have neighborhood associations. Neighborhood associations drive the neighborhoods. We speak of what is needed in the immediate neighborhood. We prioritize, and everything that we have done in all of the neighborhood associations that I've been a part of, those priorities have been given to the council, and from day one since I've been here, a lot of those items, action items that have been brought to me and that we have discussed have been worked on and have been completed.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to District 1, and we'll start first with Mr. Nichols.
You know, I've had the opportunity through my community activism, my community service, and in my past employment to engage community neighborhood groups and neighborhood associations across the city of South Bend. And you've seen some highly functional organizations. You've seen some that do some work. But what you do see is a ton of passionate people about what's happening in their neighborhood. Because it doesn't pay. This is something you volunteer to do. You leave your home to become part of this to make your community better. And most definitely they are for anybody in this role, that's your sounding board. That's who you go to. That's who they come to talk to. Your role is to be a servant to the community that you serve. And you need people to talk to you. In our organization, we've seen the great work that Fremont Park has done, the Fremont Youth Foundation has done, we've seen what the NNN has done. The Far Northwest Neighborhood Association has done some great work. And we need to be elected officials to help them be successful, to find them the resources, to find them the means to do what they want to accomplish. Because that's the neighborhood they live in. And that's, we're that liaison. We're an elected official is nobody special. We're a liaison to be a servant to the people in the community.
Thank you. Mr. Scott?
Boy, neighborhood associations, know a little bit about that. We've been involved with ours for 25 years. Very good things come out of these, and in dealing, you go to these meetings, and you're right, you're a liaison to those meetings, and so many good ideas come out of that. And there needs to be more. We need to promote more. We need NRC. There's a little reorganization with NRC. I think it's for good that there's more going to come out of the neighborhood associations around the first district and everywhere else. You know, when I was involved as a volunteer, you know, one of the things that came out of our environmental committee that we led was standardized trash containers that everybody has right now. We started Adopt-A-Block, my wife and I, when we were volunteers. Adopt-A-Block was 9 city blocks within near Northwest neighborhood. Now it's up over 260, where it's getting volunteers to come out and clean up on the weekend, where the city comes out and picks up trash. Light Up South Bend came from LaSalle Park Neighborhood Association and Keller Park Neighborhood Association. You know, when you reach out and meet with these people, a lot of good action items come out of it. Far Northwest Neighborhood. Fremont Park got a whole new city park because of that. And it was fighting for it with the past director of parks going, you know, why should we do this? The people don't care up there. No, they do care. We saw it with the youth group up there. And that's how we got Keller Park and their new splash.
Thank you. We go down to District 6. We start with Mr. Banicki.
So within the 6th district, currently we have one primary neighborhood association, and that's the Rum Village and Southside Neighborhood Association. And I've talked with several members from there, and you get a lot of good feedback from those. I also know over on the west side where I'm from, that we've got some residents already meeting preliminarily to start a new neighborhood association over there. So that is already in the works. Because we've seen in the city the value that these neighborhood associations provide. They allow your council members, your elected officials, a place to go to hear from the residents that elect them and take that feedback back and make those empowered changes in their neighborhoods. You know, so there's absolutely a need for more of them. The NRC is a powerful tool for helping getting these up and running, and I would absolutely be a proponent of helping drive that new West Side Neighborhood Association that we're working on, because there is so much work to be done, and without these opportunities to hear back directly from your residents so easily, it makes my job a lot harder if I'm elected to the council.
Thank you. Ms. Niezgodski.
Well, I have to agree with everyone up here. I think we all believe that they are a great idea, and it's a way to have a sounding board of what's going on in your communities. You know, the Rum Village Association used to meet in the nature center there. Now look what they've done with Rum Village. It's just beautiful in there. A lot of activities for families to engage in, for enthusiasts that want to test their athletic abilities. That's also there as well. But it's also great for a listening board, for people to get ideas from, to organize neighborhoods for functions like a block party. There's also, talking of block parties and your neighbors, there's an app that's called Next Door, and that's a way that kind of connects you with your neighbors as well, so that you know what's going on in your neighborhoods. So even if you don't have one right in your neighborhood, that is really a vital thing. I've lately signed on to that and found it quite fascinating what you can learn from your neighbors a few streets over. So I support it. I support the work that they do, and it's certainly a vital component of our community.
Thank you very much. The next question will go first to Ms. McBride in District 3, and it concerns nuisance ordinances. Are there any changes you would like to see to the city's nuisance ordinances, and how satisfied are you with enforcement within your district?
Well, I get complaints about nuisance in the neighborhood, and one of the complaints that I have is that when music is played loud, for instance, I just recently got a call that when the police goes out, sometimes no action can be taken because they say that the ordinance says there has to be a certain decibel. And the officers are not carrying decibel readers, may have a resident turning the music down, and then as soon as they leave, they're turning it back up. So they are feeling at a loss that there's no, thank you.
I was just checking on the volume for the live stream is a little bit low, so we can leave these table mics and then you can pass that one just to give the folks at home a better chance to hear you all.
Thank you. So they feel like they don't have a voice, and so I believe that we need to look at, I know Mishawaka has a good ordinance that deals with noise, and that's one of the things that I want to do at the council, is look at different ways that we can better help and assist the barriers that our neighbors and residents are having. Because I have multiple calls, but it doesn't seem to make sense that we do not equip the officers with the tools to determine whether noise is nuisance or not within 50 feet. So there are some major changes and some major concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
You know, nuisance property ordinances have been part of what I've done on the council. I wrote the chronic nuisance ordinance, the landlord registration, was co-author on the RSVP, the landlord safety verification program. So chronic nuisance, that came about, you know, the thing I will try to do is find process improvement. And chronic nuisance came about with a apartment complex in Sharon's district, Cedar Glen, where there was 1,000 calls to the police department in a year, every year for 10 years. You know, we could put a cop out there full-time to deal with the calls. This was an emergency. This was just police calls going out there. The cost that was to the taxpayers. So the chronic nuisance ordinance came about where it was looking and working and abating those problems with the landlords, where that dropped. The calls for service to that one apartment dropped to like 3 a month, if that. So they do work. They do need more work. They do need some improvement. You know, downstate has kind of put a squash on some of the things that we try to do with nuisance properties because of some of the political action committees down there. But you know, there are ways to hold people accountable. But the thing about it is we have Keenan Lane, a full-time officer that deals with chronic nuisance properties. And the owners and the landlords have been very good to work with and abate the situation before it gets into a serious manner.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
Thank you. You know, the nuisance ordinance, it does, I agree, it needs more teeth. It needs to, because it does not just include noise, but fighting and arguing and drug-related activities. But we can't answer that by putting out the armored truck with the police logo on it. That's not the answer. The answer is, again, like you said, working with the landlords, working with the community organizations that go in and walk those blocks and talk to people to kind of figure out, because not always are the police the answer to every argument or disagreement. Again, it's about making neighborhoods with neighbors and not automatically calling the police to figure out something. I've seen in the alley right behind my house, we get a ton of calls. There's a lot of activity, there's a lot of shootings, and they said we would love to be able to do something, but the ordinance doesn't allow us for us to do anything about this. But they call it a nuisance block, but there's nothing they can do. So definitely we need to have, to take a look at that ordinance and put some more teeth to it and see how we can involve community organizations, faith-based organizations, as well as our elected officials.
Thank you. Now we turn to District 1. We'll hear first from Ms. Niezgodski.
4-6.
Oh. Or District 6.
Come on.
Okay. Thank you. I'm from live in District 6. The nuisance property ordinance. Of course, everybody doesn't want noise at 2 o'clock in the morning. I have found that with our neighbors, if they're being noisy, walk over, knock on their door first, and ask them before they'll even go to the police department. It's always much better to be friendly with your neighbors rather than not. However, sometimes that is not a possible thing to do if your neighbors aren't friendly. So of course, you would be calling the police department to help you out. Now, I hear a lot of people saying, well, the police department doesn't do anything. Or they'll come over there and, like they said, they'll shut the music off, and when they leave, they turn the music on. So I don't know if there is some type of liaison that we could put in place that would just strictly deal with this ordinance, that could work with neighbors and neighborhoods department that could report then to the council. To me, that would maybe be one way that we could try to bridge that gap together and figure out what can we do to tackle this ordinance. So if people know if there's something like that in place, it's not always just going to be on the police department. There'll be a network of people that can look at creating a way to help stem that. So that's my intent.
Thank you. Mr. Banicki.
So the nuisance ordinance has been around for a while now, and we've seen great results from it. You know, again, you can't argue with what happened at Cedar Glen, where you go from 1,000 calls to 3 a month, essentially. That's a clear indication that a policy is working. You know, Officer Lane is one person, and that makes it an awful tough thing for him to cover a city and document the calls that come in to a city that can average 10,000 calls a month on a slow month. So that one of the big things we could do is offer him some additional support. It doesn't always need to be police officer support within the department. We can also use civilian positions to help fill some of those administrative tasks and help be that liaison to the neighborhoods to help get better information and help make that ordinance even more effective. Because, again, the best information is going to come from the people who live in those neighborhoods when we're dealing with those problems. If you're sending an officer out, you know, it could be one officer on Monday, a different one on Tuesday, and a third one on Thursday. So it becomes hard to track those if you don't have somebody there to help them. I think really adding a couple extra people to Officer Lane's staff could go a long way to helping make this ordinance even better for residents.
Thank you. We will next give you each 60 seconds to talk about public transportation. We go first to District 1 and to Mr. Nichols. What are your plans to improve public transportation? Do you think it needs improvement? And is there any way to get more people to use it?
Wow. Yes. So in regards to what the needs are, there are third shift jobs. People need to get to work. We need a bus that runs all night long. We need to get people to work. If they can't work that job, then they can't keep their home. And then they're at homeless shelters. And so transportation is a huge issue. We've gotten some grant funding with the city to be able to give people gift cards to do ride share programs. But what happens when that grant dries up? Where do we go from there? And so you have to have those working relationships with the public transportation, with the transpo system, and find out what their plans are. And really, that is community activated. There was a time when they were trying to cut off the transpo from going down Ardmore. But when the community got involved and said that's not going to happen because that's detrimental to our community, they kept that route. So really, this has to be community driven to get that third shift route so people can get to work, people can get shopping. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. One of the biggest issues that I have is on Sundays. You know, if you ride the bus system, you don't have a car. Sundays, you're not going places unless you're walking. You know, I was really happy with the Bloomberg grant that we received on the rideshare program. What we got to do is look at the data off that grant and then see how we can sustain that funding for that and see how that works for it. Yeah, we not only need to lobby Transpo, but it's affecting everybody within the region too. You know, from Mishawaka, all over the county, even down to Goshen. You know, we got to lobby for that. And we got to lobby to the U.S. government, our federal side, for better funding on our transportation, because it's a gap issue and an economic issue for people. So we need to do that. It breaks my heart, you know, that there is not buses running on a Sunday, you know, and then late at night. You're right, and, you know, third shift, all that, and then cutting back on, you know, we just heard. I gotta stop, just like Lynn Coleman.
Thank you, Lynn. I mean, Tim. Ms. McBride.
I also think there's things that we need to do with the public transportation. There are barriers with me working over community corrections. We transport 3 shifts per day to get back and forth to work. We also buy bus passes as incentives for them to see their families on the weekend when they have passes for good behavior and step down to go home. So it has been a problem for them with not having transportation. Lime bikes and scooters may be great, but what if we implement something that we can have riding for the same cost? And because there's sometimes when you have people that are, even when you catch the bus, we need to also revisit the routes. Because sometimes when you catch the bus, you still have to get off and walk a mile home. Or we fought at community corrections at Bendix in Lakewood for the bus. They had changed the route to stop at Bendix. That was still a good ways for them to walk to the facility, court order. So we petitioned Transpo, and they put the bus stop right there in our facility.
Thank you. And now to District 6 and Mr. Banicki.
So we often talk a lot about wanting to be a 21st century here in South Bend. And that means having 21st century mass transportation. Because ultimately, as companies look where to locate the business, one of the things more and more of them look at is your public transportation, because we know we have a generation of those kids 30 and under who are choosing less and less to own and drive cars. So it's not just an economic issue, it's also a generational issue where we have to make sure we're providing transportation that meets the need for everybody on every schedule. So that means, like Mr. Scott said, petitioning downstate, petitioning the federal government, working with Mishawaka, working with Elkhart and Elkhart County to get those additional dollars to make that bus run 7 days a week. It doesn't even have to be 24 hours a day, but if you can have a bus that runs till midnight and another one that starts at 5 a.m. so you can get those third shift workers to and from work, that goes a long way. And I think those are the things that we need to look at in making Transpo part of a 21st century city.
Thank you. Ms. Niezgodski.
Thank you. Transpo is quite the topic. I believe that they have done a lot of good things for the city. I have a brand new Martin's over where I live, and they have set up a bus stop right there to pick up residents so they can shop there and be able to get transportation back to their home. I used to live in Ardmore, actually, and ride the bus downtown every day to go pay bills with my mom. That's before people actually used to go pay bills. So I think Transpo has, well, I'm not in person pay bills. Now everything's with the internet of a stamp. So I think they have done a lot of things. I always think there is room for improvement, and that would be revisiting bus routes, like they said, is important as well. But from what I can see in my neighborhood, I think that they're serving the residents of the 6th district pretty good, but perhaps that does need to be revisited. That's all I can say.
Thank you. We will turn next to a question about the homeless in our city. And it will go first to District 1 and Mr. Nichols. And it says, how are you going to help the homeless population of South Bend? Is this a problem in your district?
So let me give you a little background on that. For the last 10 years, I have worked and ran the city's weather amnesty program here in South Bend. And my first job in South Bend when I moved here was at Hope Industries as the director of operations. So I'm intimately involved with the homeless population here, and having been homeless myself, know the barriers to success. Many people think that the homeless populations are all drug addicts, alcoholics, but sometimes bad things happen to good people, whether it be job loss, home loss, a divorce, anything. And to address the homelessness issue, we have to realize that we're serving so many homeless people in South Bend because we have the services they need. They're coming from Elkhart, Mishawaka, LaPorte, Indianapolis. I see people every night. We have new people every night, and we track their zip codes. They're coming from all over. And this is an issue that is not just the city's responsibility. Community organizations, residents, individuals, churches, and now I must stop.
Is that 60 or 90?
60.
Would you like it under 30?
Sure.
We could do 90, so we could actually talk about how to address it.
You have to have, they opened up the wonderful area off of Indiana, the Fuse Project, but without wraparound services. Homelessness happens for a reason, and you have to address those reasons by just giving someone a roof over their head. Yes, you end the definition of homelessness, but you have not addressed the cause. And so making sure that wraparound services are available in any program or project you do is key to working to solve the homelessness issue. And just in my last 8 seconds, just a great shout out to Michiana 5, Center for the Homeless, Hope Ministries, and all the individuals that help with the homeless. It's such a huge issue.
Thank you very much. Mr. Scott.
Yes, we have some world-class facilities right here in South Bend. And, you know, on council, a lot of people are saying, why is it only a South Bend issue? Why isn't Mishawaka stepping up? And other people are stepping up. Well, you know what, there are times we have to take the lead, and we are taking the lead. And I agree with my opponent right here, is wraparound services is absolutely a necessity. Right now, the administration has looked at real estate, they've looked at buildings, they've looked at all that, but they have not wrapped their hands around wraparound services. And we really got to get involved with that too. But that funding isn't only going to be from the city. You know, we got to work together on that as well as with the county and other entities that can provide the income for that and the expertise on that on wraparound services beyond Hope and the Center for the Homeless and Hope Rescue Mission. So that's one thing that we have started tackling at the Common Council, and we need to continue to do that and look at that wraparound service.
Thank you. We'll now go to District 3 and Ms. McBride.
I have one of the most heavily populated districts with homeless, and that's where my passion have come from. Prior to being appointed to council, working with Broadway Church and being a member of the SOAR board, that was one of the goals and missions, to make sure that how can we help them to get them off the streets. And I was the council person who spearheaded the delay of the pods being opened on Michigan Street. And not because we don't need the permanent supportive housing, but there was no long-term plan. And there were no definitive partners at the table in solutions. So one of the reasons why it became delayed is because we are still working and talking about, after this weather amnesty is over, let's get it right for the homeless, for permanent supportive housing, and how can we go forward with that and help, whether they need IDs, driver's license, veteran services, continue to work with Goodwill and Work One, the Center for the Homeless, and Hope, and additional partners to come to the table, that if they are in need of treatment, we can direct them in the right place. If they have homes to go to, how can we get them back home? And for them not to continue to migrate to South Bend, because a lot of times they just need a way home in order for us to be able to solve the problem.
Thank you. District 6 and Mr. Banicki.
So obviously it has to start with housing first. I'm going to talk the economic side of it first, because we all know the moral imperative of leaving people outside in the cold. On average, it costs the taxpayer $40,000 per year for each homeless citizen, when you count all the extra EMS runs, the interactions with police, and all of that. If you put them in permanent supportive housing with wraparound services, that cost to the average taxpayer drops to $17,000 per person. Now imagine what we could do with an extra $23,000 per homeless person in the city to fund other issues. And obviously we've got a lot of good partners in the city, and we need to make them partners in that housing first movement. You know, we got the Center for the Homeless, we've got Hope Rescue, we've got Michiana 5, and a lot of churches that have stepped up to the plate and done amazing things. And we need to make them partners as we move these people into permanent supportive housing. But we also need to work with our neighboring governmental agencies to make sure that they're helping fund this as well. It shouldn't just be a South Bend problem. We can lead the charge, but we need everybody who's part of this to be part of the solution, not just look at us to say, well, they live on your streets even though they come from our city, and we're counting on you to take care of it. It needs to be an everybody problem, because if you looked at Chicago this year, when they got their first real cold blast, there were estimates of 7 to 11 people who died in that. And luckily we avoided that, but we don't want to go to another winter where we're wondering if that will be us next year.
Thank you. Ms. Niezgodski.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more on that subject. Homelessness, it's so challenging because you have people that have mental health issues, drug addiction issues, and just issues at home, whether it's women that are being battered into their home that's been forced to leave. And we are fortunate in the city of South Bend to have the YWCA, the Center for the Homeless. We have some very quality places here. but I believe there needs to be a much greater outreach in those wraparound services. Mental health, to me, is one of the #1 things that people fail to address on a number of levels that put people into poverty. Not that that's the only reason, but I believe it's one of the bigger reasons. And when the state had closed a lot of our mental health facilities that people could reach out into to get help, it left a real void in communities. And just not in our district, because we do have the Oliver Inn, I believe, that they just built in the Rum Village area. But of course, the wraparound services. I believe that if you can partner with some other people, whether it be legislatively, with the universities, making sure that the city is being connected with maybe one person that can work with all the other agencies to find out what are people saying, what is it they're needing, and start addressing it. But to me, it's mental health. I believe mental health is the #1 thing we should be looking at.
Thank you. I'm going to mix it up here with one of our 30-second questions. Came in on a blue card. Somebody must have brought their own. It says, campaigns often get nasty. What will you do to keep your campaign classy? And we'll start with District 6, Ms. Niezgodski.
Nasty, not classy. Well, I believe that anybody who decides to serve and put their name forth to represent their community should do it in a positive way. I will be positive. I want to represent my community because I love the city that I live in and I love the district I live in. I've been there 20 years. We're all Democrats in a primary, and it serves nobody any good, especially if you're going to be nasty with one another, because you're going to see them again in the community. We all live together. So it serves no benefit, and I will be positive. I pledge to stay positive. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Banicki.
So she hit a lot of key points. We're all Democrats. And at the end of the day, we all want to make our communities a better place to live. So I think that's what you got to keep the focus on, is how you can bring your unique set of skills and talents to make your community a better place to live. And just be personable with everybody. There's no losers at the end of this day. We're all winners for putting our name out there running. And we've all floated some amazing ideas that hopefully we can all work together after the election to make successful. Because at the end of the day, none of us can do this on our own. It's going to take all of us together to make everything better for us.
Thank you. Ms. McBride.
That's the words of Michelle Obama. When they go low, you go high. And there's no need sometimes to rebuke anything that anyone says about you. Let your works speak for himself. And if anyone asks any of the neighborhood associations, and I have to give a shout out to Sunnymead and Wayne Street because I'm active in those neighborhoods as well, I think that they will tell you that I am doing my job and just let my works speak for it, and I continue to work with everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
I think every time I've seen Karl at an event, we shake hands and say good luck. Before we even started tonight, said, good luck, and I'm committed to running a clean, fair campaign. It's not about going negative on anybody. I think it's the issues that come out, and that's the beauty of this, and this is the beauty of the democracy. Anybody can come out and voice their opinion. 2015, I had no one run against me. 2011, I had 3 other people, and I sat down with them and talked to them because we're willing to throw our name in the hat. We're willing to commit to our city. We got good ideas.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
I think you'll see on all of my campaign materials, I have a clean campaign commitment written on the material so everybody knows. And just in this 30 seconds, it says, I am committed, dedicated to running a clean, positive, and fact-filled campaign. I believe that we should campaign to show who has the best vision to represent District 1 voters, rather than use unnecessary personal and negative attacks. Not only will it help voters like you find out who will best represent your vision for the district and for the city of South Bend, it will help keep the election process fun and exciting. Sometimes the mudslinging, it causes voter apathy.
Thank you. You all mentioned, or several of you mentioned, that you're all Democrats. This is, after all, primary election, and we do have some Republicans running for that council, but they are not contested, so they will be invited to our speed dating events and also to the Meet the Candidates forum at the library. But we're having these issue-based forums with voter questions for those candidates who are actually contested in the primary race. This questioner wants to know, why do you identify with the Democratic Party? and I will give you each 1 minute to answer. And we go first to Ms. Niezgodski.
Thank you. I guess I identify with the Democratic Party, one, because my grandma was a Democrat, and she was a precinct committee person. She was very involved with the Kennedy campaigns back then, so I kind of grew up that way. I'm kind of rooted that way. But more than anything, I believe that Democrats are all about opportunity. It's giving a person a hand up and not expecting a handout. Being inclusive, unity, making sure that everybody has a seat at the table. They always say we have a big tent, the Democrats do, and everybody is invited. So I believe in those values. I think if we all come together and work together, we can make the world a much better place to live.
Thank you. Mr. Banicki.
So I'm a 4th generation Democrat here in South Bend alone. You can go back to Stanley Mezzakowski, my great-grandfather. You can go to my grandfather, Frank Banicki, who was a precinct committee person in the 6th District. And I've got my mother here, Sharon McBride, who's also a precinct committee here in the 6th District. But as I heard over the winter, sometimes you hear the other party talk about freedom from, whereas Democrats talk a lot about freedom to. And that's what I truly believe in, is we want people to be free to be who they are and love who they are and achieve whatever they can achieve. But we want to make sure that there's nothing that stands in their way. And I feel like that identifies with me at the very core, because I want people to be who they are and love who they love and achieve absolutely the most that their God-given talents can take them to. And I feel like the Democratic Party is the party that identifies with that the most.
Thank you. Ms. McBride.
My uncle ran for senator in Alabama, and prior to that, my family, my grandparents were strong Democrats. So I grew up in a household and generations of Democrats. I love the inclusion and equality and the fairness of the party, and I just believe that the Democrat has the strong values and core values that we need to continue to lead not only the city, but this country as well.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
My grandfather was a UAW union member. My father was a Teamster. My father-in-law was a welder and pipe fitter, all in unions. My brother-in-law and a union painter. We come from a long line of hardcore Democrats and hardcore union people as well. And it's just that. It's all inclusiveness with me. Love everybody, help everybody out, include them so they can get a good, fair wage, a good day's pay, and do the things that help bring everybody up the best we can. And it's just something I believe in. I'm also environmental conservationist, especially with cold water streams. Clean, cold water is very key to me. I was living in Maine. That's when I became just hardcore on the conservation side.
Well, I don't have the same testimony as the rest of them. I didn't even know what a Democrat or Republican was until I went to college. And then we found out there was a choice. I grew up with a grandmother and grandfather who were in interracial marriage but believed Reaganomics was the best thing ever. And I had to learn what that was. But I became more affiliated with the Democrat Party just because of the common beliefs. And we talked about freedom, we talked about choice, we talked about just being who you are. But what I do is I look at it visually. When I look at a room full of Democrats, you have everybody. But lately, when you look at a room full of Republicans, everybody looks alike. And this world doesn't all look alike. And so that's why I identify most with the Democratic Party.
Thank you. We will start the next question first with Ms. McBride. And it says, according to one of our mayoral candidates, the city budget only funds repaving each street once every 88 years. Is this satisfactory? And if not, is there anything at all that a city council can do to change this? 60 seconds.
Well, that's one of the things that I did hear that, and I am not sure if that is what ordinance that is, but I definitely would want to go back and research and find out why. That would be that once every 85 years, or if that's how long we have left, because we have a lot of roads that needs to be repaved, and not just paved over. I'm talking about stripped down and repaved. Right now we're layering top on top of, layers, and all it is doing is affecting, some of the lanes and blocking the curbs, and sidewalks, or now you have no curbs where we just repaved. So some of the things that I've been having calls for as far as the infrastructure with roads and potholes and alleyways is to make sure how can we invest in and make sure that we are getting the best bang for the buck, if you will, to make sure that we do not have to go long-term and make sure our infrastructure is safe.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
I sure hope we don't have to wait 88 years to drive from Portage to Wilbur down Elwood. I can't make it anymore. My truck will die. Yeah, I don't know for sure how factual that is, or even if that, but I do know that doesn't suffice once every 88 years. And if you put money into the budget every year, why do you gotta wait 88 years to spend it? So I would say I would need more research to answer that with any kind of education, but it doesn't sound right, and it doesn't sound like that would be something we need to do. I will say though, you can see that little truck that shoots out the gravel, and then by the afternoon it's a pothole again. There's been proposals made to the city for a better, more economical way to pave roads, and I think maybe as this campaign goes along, we should take a look at those, and as we go into after we win these election seats, that we look at these other opportunities to pave our roads.
Mr. Scott.
Yeah, we need to put more money in the budget for paving, and that's part of the initiative of making our neighborhoods stronger, doing more with our streets, doing more with the paving. The other part to factor in it is not only the money that the city has, but it's the gasoline tax and the money coming from downstate, and that has been cut for. Thank you for those, all of them here in the audience. But it has been cut, and that's a problem that we have. I do know that good news, Bendix is actually going to get paved. That was actually through a federal grant that came up, and actually took 2 more years to get that grant. So even at the federal level, we're losing funding on roads. We need to do the best that we possibly can and make the most impact with that. So, Sharon McBride just talked about it. We used to party curbs and sidewalks. That whole program was a test pilot up on Johnson Street because they paved too high up on the crown.
Mr. Banicki.
So I touched on this very early. The number is, between 80 and 100 years to repave our roads. We know under optimal conditions that asphalt roads are designed to last about 20 years. So that means we're expecting 4 to 5 times the useful life out of that road. And as the council, you are the legislative body of the city, which means you, at the end of the day, have to approve the budget and have the power of the purse. So when you look at road spending, that again, if you look at the Motor Vehicle Highway Fund 202 in the city budget, where we go to 2011 with a $1.4 million surplus, and at the end of 2018, that fund now has an $8 million surplus. It means we're not even spending all the dollars we're getting into that fund on our road repairs, let alone looking at things like TIF dollars that can be used for those infrastructure improvements. And we also have a cash reserve in the city right now with $288.7 million at the end of fiscal year 18. Sometimes it's nice to have a fiscal reserve, but too large of one can be a problem when we have roads that are looking at 80 to 100 years before you repave, while the rest of us keep replacing rims and tires while we play the dodge the pothole game.
Ms. Niezgodski.
Yeah, 88 to 100 years, I don't myself know if that's a true number. And I'm hearing some of them, yes it is. For me, I guess it is budgeting if you can budget more dollars, but you're not going to budget enough dollars to pave all the roads that need our attention. To me, I think we should be looking at it technology-based. What materials are we using? Is there a better product? Is there a better base? Is there a better way to do the roads where we could get a longer longevity? Is there something that's greener? Just because we're used to doing everything the way that it is done now, Doesn't mean that there may not be another alternative that can be a better steward of taxpayer dollars. So that's the kind of the way that I would look at it.
Thank you. The next question is a big one, but you will have 1 minute to give us your best solution, which is the question which came to us online is crime a problem in your district? And what is your plan for reducing crime in your district and the city as a whole? Ms. McBride.
Absolutely. Yes, crime is prevalent in the 3rd District. One of the things that I have worked with administration on this year, and it is in the budget, there is a shot spotter that is in this year's budget that will be placed somewhere in the 3rd District. Being that it's confidential, not even I will know where that would be placed, but those are one of the things that I pushed to have and requested for this year's budget to minimize some of the crime or a faster response. There's a lot of things that we cannot stop if we have been reactive. The police have to be reactive, and they can't take guns out of the hands before you know that someone's going to shoot. But we need to continue to engage our youth. We need to continue to engage the neighbors and get with them and find out what the problems are. We have a lot of groups in this city. I currently work with GBI. I'm over criminal justice, but some of the laws have changed that don't allow certain criminals to be in the system, and gun violence is one of them. If you serve less than a year in sentence, you can no longer go to the local jail or prisons. So we have a lot of those people out on the streets.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
1st District with crime, yeah, absolutely. And we do have shot spotter, that's one of it, but this is such a multifaceted answer to it. GVI, the group violence intervention, is working. I think we need to take it beyond that. Isaac Hunt and Kenneth Lee are working on bringing a proactive program to the schools where it's kind of an offshoot to GVI to come into the schools and make sure that, conflict resolution, working with kids to make sure that they get on top of this and try to get kids into mentorship, And crime just goes on beyond crime. It goes on, why is there the crime? And part of it is because of jobs. We need to look at jobs. We need to look at, the Western, the small business development on Lincoln Way where James Summers is doing work. Starting new businesses and trying to find opportunities for people that can make a choice over violence or good positive outcomes such as a job.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
I really wish you could see these little maps of data I did on my phone earlier. This is just a portion of District 1. This is just Census Tract 6 and Census Tract 7. I wish you could see the disparity of the crime in the 2 census tracts in one area. If you look at the little red, you see the bullet holes? That's the shootings. This is one area, but if you cross over Portage, you're going to see the same thing. So yes, violence is prevalent in District 1, but if you look at where it's happening at, it is happening because of economics. It's happening because of housing issues. It's happening because of other social economic issues that aren't being addressed. So yes, the violence is happening. I agree. But we've drawn down, we have the data to know where it's happening at. We just know we need to go and address it and stop talking about it and do something.
Thank you. Ms. Niezgodski.
I think we can all sit here and agree that there is an issue with crime in the districts throughout the city. And yes, you have the shot spotters, they're very helpful. But I believe that getting into, with your churches or community organizations, digging into the neighborhoods, a lot of times it can just be isolated into a couple blocks of where people identify. It's really talking to the neighbors, finding out where is it going on. In my neighborhood, we've had issues in the neighborhood, but we also talk with our neighbors up and down the street to find out what's going on, try to get an intervention, call the police department, just be persistent. Now, I know that sounds, that's for you to say, but that's not really solving the problem. No, because there's also inequality, drugs, the neighborhoods. When you have a disparity in income, people tend to get involved with things that aren't so good.
Mr. Banicki.
So I think anybody with 2 eyes and 2 ears knows South Bend has a crime problem. I don't think there's any district that escapes that by any stretch of the imagination. Of course, there are some areas that are more impacted than others. Being a resident of the 6th District, I live in one of the more impacted areas. I walk out my front door and there's a shot spotter on the light pole right across the street from me. So they may be secret when they go out, but as soon as you see one, you know what you're looking at. And a couple of other people touched on it. You have to start with economic opportunity. If people don't see an opportunity outside of the path of crime, then they're going to take the path of least resistance and make things happen. But one of the things I'm proposing as one of my key priorities is last year in the budget, because we've had 30 unfilled police officers in this city for so long, they removed those positions from the budget. That needs to be put back into the budget. Then we need to look at paying those positions enough so that they can attract the correct talent into those positions, because once we get past starting pay, we lag behind every other city that's of similar size. And we need to make sure that when we hire those applicants, they look like the people in the neighborhoods they serve, so that way it's not just people who look like me going into every neighborhood.
Thank you. Our next question also came in online, and it says, the industrial Midwest is sometimes referred to as the Silicon Prairie. What is your plan for attracting more high-tech jobs to the city so we can take advantage of these opportunities? What can the council do? And this goes first to you, Mr. Nichols, 60 seconds.
I feel like I'm going to take the one first. Is it because I'm the new guy? What's going on? You know, we have a lot of high-paying jobs here. What about everybody else? There's some people who aren't going to go into technology or nanotechnology. We have the infrastructure, we have Ignition Park, we have the other one by Notre Dame. We are educating people and trying to eliminate the brain drain by people going away to college and not coming back home. I get it. But what about the people that are here now suffering who don't have that education level or don't want to be in technology? What do we do with those individuals? And so, yes, that is great. I would want to attract any job to come to the city of South Bend. Not just technology, just not nanotechnology, but heck, at my current job, we're hiring custodians for $18.03 an hour. That's a pretty good paying job. You don't have to have a master's degree in nanotechnology to get it. But you have a good working job, full-time with benefits, and that's what we need.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
For 25 years, I've been in international business and understand the business side. And I think that's important when you're in a leadership role, is people can have the confidence to come talk to you. You can talk the talk and walk the walk. But not only in high-tech jobs, but yeah, I agree with Karl. It's like there are so many layers to any jobs. You know, we hired 18-year-olds right out of school that came in June receiving and training and teaching them. And I think that's crucial too for any job here. There's so many layers to support for any business coming here, and we got to look at that. You know, Federal Mogul tried to fill 60 spots one time, and they got 1,600 applicants, and they couldn't fill it. And it was at all levels of the job. So we got to put people in touch with the right people. You know, Goodwill Industries, our trades are a great source of getting people in the pipeline that don't want to go to college and don't want to do something high tech. But we have various stratas all across businesses, and we need to bring all those jobs here.
Thank you. Ms. McBride.
I agree. I know that we have different abatements that try to attract businesses here, and we are flourishing, especially like around downtown area with the Cubs coming in and different organizations and a lot of renovations and for job opportunities. But we need to begin locally, like we've been talking about, at home with jobs and looking at now branching out to the neighborhoods. And what can we do to get our own homegrown people who are qualified that run IT or technological businesses to invest here. We don't need people coming from outside of Indiana to invest, and we have prominent people right here in South Bend and the St. Joe County area who could start their own businesses for us to support, that they can pay decent wages and hire people and train them to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Banicki.
So we have a few strategic advantages when it comes to being the Silicon Prairie and attracting some of these jobs. First starts with our weather. If you've got to have large servers, you need cold spaces to keep them. We've seen the ways we've been ingenuitive in creating that server space when we used them to heat the Potawatomi Conservatory and greenhouse out there. So we've got these amazing advantages. We have the St. Joe Valley MetroNet, which provides fiber to any business that can attach to it. So these are things that we have to market as our strengths. And then some of the other things we have, if you look down some of our corridors, like Sample and Western Avenue, we have some vacant lots that we can get land relatively cheap to new businesses that want to locate here. You don't just have to go to Ignition Park or out to Blackthorn. We can look to infill fit areas of the city with these jobs, and then we can look to develop training programs for our citizens who want to make that move to technology jobs. Because whether we like it or not, a lot of jobs in the future are heading that way. Do we need complete job solutions? 100%. We need to make sure we have our residents ready for the jobs of the 21st century as well.
Thank you. Ms. Niezgodski.
To me, it's about community investment in those CDC corporations. Working with them, identifying what is a good fit for the areas where we can develop them. Is it cost prohibitive or not? And if it's not, let's get them in here and see what can we offer. They talked about TIF dollars earlier, they talked about tax abatements earlier, and I think that those are tools that you can do to attract people in here if there's a need for that company on the technical side, when we talk about Silicon Prairie. On the other side of it, I think about the plumbers and pipe fitters, the IBEW Local 153, steel workers, iron workers. Those are very important jobs that we have right here in our city, that we have programs for right here in our city. And we can start channeling our youth into those. I don't believe you always have to have a college education to raise your family. My husband and I, we raised his family, our children. And he's a plumber, Local 172. So I think that we need to stop looking so much as college-driven and also look at this technical trade side of it.
Thank you. Our next question, and they are rotating around, we're not picking on you, it goes first to Mr. Nichols, is that you will be elected to represent your district. What do you think is most unique about your district, and how will you balance the need to be a voice for your district with the need to work with people from other districts and look out for the good of the city as a whole? So how do you balance the desire to represent your district with the fact that you're working with others and against your being a voice for the city as a whole? That sounds like the crux of the question there. 60 seconds.
Right. If you look at the mission statement for the South Bend Common Council, it says that the city government is always responsive to the needs of our residents and that the betterment of South Bend is always our highest priority. But I believe you got to take that to another level. You can't just be responsive, but you need to be proactive to the needs of the residents. And how do you do that? You get out there and you talk to them. Because it cannot, again, like I said earlier, cannot be a come to us design. When you need something, come talk to city council. No, we need to find out what you need or how we can help. And how do you balance it? I would presume that all of our districts have similar issues. And if we're out there talking to them, then when we're talking together, once we're elected, I got that same issue in my district. How can we work together to address that? And so we're not isolated silos, right? But this is about working together to address all the issues of the city and address them specifically in your district. We find an intervention or an avenue that everybody can use across the city.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
The first district is very diverse. You go from downtown, all the way out to Orange Street, actually, and Cross Creek. Even the entire district has a huge makeup. I'm in that district every week. Somewhere I'm in that district meeting with someone. I've had people call me. It's like, I have a problem over a Riverside Lathrop. It's like, okay, what's your address? I'll be right there. And I'm pulling up as we're still talking to them. That is crucial. But it's absolutely right. We see commonality among districts, but a lot of our decisions when we're on common council, you know, we're going to fight. Every one of us up here is going to fight for their district. They're going to try to present things that get done within their district. But when we have a vote, the vote is absolutely for the entire city. So when you're thinking of your vote, it's 103,000 people out there that you're making a decision on. And you do have your certain district in mind, but we got to look at the entire city.
Thank you. Ms. McBride.
Continue to engage with the neighborhood associations in my district and business associations. I go out and meet, have breakfast, coffee, go and look at the different businesses in my area, as well as promoting other areas, like the Love You Rock grant that's out now, promoting them in different neighborhoods. I answer emails and phone calls, and when it's a call or email or question from out of my district, make sure that I connect them with the right council person. And as the city as a whole, I think continuing to have open forums, like with the financial series that we have going on in the climate change. The council has been more transparent and inclusive to have the public understand what is going on in the city and what we're doing. So keeping the community engaged, that's what I'll continue to do outside of the neighborhood.
Thank you. Mr. Banicki.
So one of the advantages of having gone to council meetings for years is you get to really see how the council has to work. You know, you can be an advocate for your district, but at the end of the day, it takes 5 votes to get anything done. So you have to build those relationships with those other council people. And one of the things I've worked hard at so far is going to meet as many different people that are running, you know, in addition to existing relationships I have with some of the council people that are running. You know, so yes, you're always trying to balance the needs of the 6th district as a 6th district resident versus the needs of the whole city. And you won't find anybody who's advocated harder for the 6th district over the years than me. And, you know, one of the things you gotta look at when you look at the 6th district is we're such an interesting area because we're an old immigrant neighborhood that's now being rebirthed to life as a new immigrant neighborhood. And you need to learn how to work across those diverse communities to make everybody feel welcome and make everybody feel a part of South Bend's future and success.
Thank you. And Ms. Niezgodski.
Working together, I believe, is the key to anything that you have, anything that you want to move forward in a productive manner. Identifying issues. You identify issues by getting involved in your community directly. What are the people telling you? What is it, the things that they want to see? You can have all the ideas in the world, but it may not be the ideas that they feel is important to their district. And in the 6th district, again, I hear a lot about empty lots and affordable homes. And when you talk about how do you balance that with the rest of the council, consensus. I believe that that is something that everybody can come together, come to an agreement to make the community better. And for me, it would be to make the 6th district better. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question will be 60 seconds, and it will actually go first to you, Sheila Niezgodski. It says, do you think pay-to-play projects are a problem in South Bend? If so, what will you do to address the problem? Yeah. Do you think that pay-to-play projects are a problem in South Bend? If so, what would you do to address the problem? In other words, usually what I hear people meaning when they use that phrase is that people are greasing the palms of members of the council or otherwise financially incentivizing projects. You can say no, you don't have to use your full 60 seconds.
Okay, pay-to-play projects are a problem. Well, I believe that there's a lot of oversight of taxpayer dollars. I don't think that the projects that we have, I believe there's oversight, there's a process. When projects come before, there's a bidding process, and there's also laid out on what the parameters of every project is, what the bond is, what the insurance requirement is, what the workforce may need to be, how many people are supposed to be on it, and what is the timeline that you're supposed to have for that completion. So I would say the oversight, absolutely. You should always make sure that somebody is looking out for taxpayer dollars. To say that if there is a problem in the city, I can't speak to that. I don't know if there is or not. but I do believe that oversight is a key, and that as long as you are abiding by the rules of that, hopefully there's not a pay-to-play problem, but I really can't speak to that. But what I would say is there are a specific set of yeah, guidelines, yes, thank you. I couldn't think of the word of guidelines, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Banicki.
You know, as somebody who's paid attention to city government for a while, would I say it's a problem? No. Would I say that it doesn't happen though? That would be kind of a hard stretch to say too. When you see bids going to the same consultants time and time again, and then you look at donor records and see them on, you know, particularly mayoral candidates' donor lists. So to pretend that it doesn't exist would be disingenuous. Do we do our best to make sure that everybody feels like they have an opportunity? Sure, and I know the city, you know, particularly when it works out to minority businesses getting contracts, has tried to do some outreach to make sure that these people know what the requirements are to even get on that list to bid for these projects. So that way we can try to open that up to more people. But at the end of the day, it's not a big problem, but it's still something that we need to keep an eye on and make sure that not all of the projects are done with the same few people.
Thank you. Ms. McBride.
I understand and ask what was taking place, so obviously I'm not for it. So I think that we have a fiscal responsibility to make sure that we are hiring the right people, holding them accountable, making sure that when they make commitments that they are written, and making sure that we are having diversity and inclusion on projects that we have. And as far as if there's any backdoor money given, I am not aware of that, but we definitely have a responsibility to make sure that we are being responsible with all of our taxpayers' dollars.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
8 years on council, I have not seen any inclination of that with anyone on the common council, and you know that's 2 terms of council members, and I haven't seen that with the city. You know, we are in a smaller market where there are some bigger fish that do get contracts on that. Is that happening with the city? I'm not really sure. I haven't seen anything or heard anything from that that stance. But you know, one thing I'm really proud of is being a co-sponsor of the responsible bidder ordinance, where we actually put in place with the city that they have to go out and do audits and check on contractors that are getting city dollars to do contract work and making sure that they're paying all their wages and paying the wages correctly and the taxes that come into the city and to the county. That's highly important. So the other thing is disparity with minority vendors and suppliers. I believe in what the Diversity and Inclusion Department is doing. The disparity report will be out soon, and we're making strides to make it better for the city.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, I need a clear definition of what pay to play was, so, yeah, I don't know. So what I'll do to take with this few seconds that I have left to talk about it is that, again, I agree with Mr. Scott regarding minority-owned businesses and contractors being a part of the process and being a part of knowing when the bids are available and knowing that they can bid. And not just, when we talk about bidding, it's not just the lowest bidder. So the legislation for the responsible bidder is the lowest bidder that meets the criteria. But we have to make sure that we enforce the criteria on the work sites. We make sure we enforce the criteria when they get to paying their employees, make sure they're paying them as employees and not independent contractors, and leaving them on the hook with a 1099 at the end of the year. So we need to make sure that that is happening rather than worrying about greasing palms. I don't know about that stuff, but I can talk about this other stuff.
Okay, thank you. All right. The next question says, do you feel that having city workers working on private properties is a problem? If so, what will you do to stop this practice? And this will be panelist choice because we're getting to the end where we need to adjourn and move into our reception time. So the alternative is how will you make the city budget whole again, it appears to me that we are in debt $300 million. So you can address either of those, and we start with Sheila Niezgodski.
Thank you. Well, I'm not sure about the city workers working on private property unless they're referring to easements. If there happens to be some work that needs to be done in a tree lawn area, or they're widening a street, although the property owner may maintain that area, it still may be a part of the city's ownership in that. There is a certain easement, a lot of people are not even aware of them, even though you may put a tree or beautify the area. So when it comes into the problem is when they go in and they have to do some work, dig it up, redo a gas line, fix a water leak or a sewer. Yeah, you have to dig down and excavate that area in order to repair it. So although the homeowner not like it, and a lot of times the city will put that burden of placing it all back together in the way you exactly had it on the homeowner, sometimes it's still, you still need to do that in order to restore services, whether it's water, sewer, or perhaps a gas leak. So sometimes you do have to go onto a homeowner's property. That's what I'm guessing they're referring to.
Thank you, Mr. Banicki.
So I'm going to try and take a stab at both of these in 60 seconds. In terms of the budget, I constantly talk about having to prioritize needs versus wants, but debt isn't necessarily something that's on the rise. When I started doing some of the research for this, it's kind of held steady over the last 5 to 6 years. It's still a large number, but it's something that we're paying down, adding to, paying down. That's, at the end of the day, that's part of the city business. I'm going to guess that the question asker is referring primarily towards Catherine Roos when we had city workers videotaped and taking pictures of them building her patio. It has to be accountability. At the end of the day, when she's allowed to resign and move out of state to go back to school, and none of the city workers were fired for that, as far as the public knows, then that's a problem. Because at the end of the day, we can't have taxpayer dollars going to work on private projects during the time they're being paid by the taxpayers. That's just an unacceptable thing, and we need to make sure it doesn't happen going forward.
Ms. McBride.
The first about the workers working on private property, if it's as Jason says, I would say no, and that definitely should be taken up with the department and if need be legal. So I can't really speak much on that matter. But moving on to the budget, I know that we are anticipating the physical curve, not cut, but curve. And I know that it was anticipated that we will lose $2 million a year from tax revenues due to the curve. But because of the administration working with council, we've been fiscally responsible in closing that gap. And hopefully we'll continue to do that and prioritize our needs and make sure that we put our resources into the projects that need to be done and different than, like you said, versus the wants.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
So hypothetically, if someone came to the council for privilege of the floor and asked about city workers working on private property, yes and no. There are times where it's not right, and then there's other times where it is. Ms. Niezgodski hit it pretty much out of the park. There are times where the city has to come in and do easements or come in on the property because there's some other public issue or some other safety issue to it. I did remind our council about a response back to someone on privilege of floor. So that'll be coming. The other thing on the overall health of the city is in great shape on their budget, and we have working capital, we have working debt. We have a reserve that keeps us at a AA bond rating within the city. We're quite healthy on what's going on. Can we always have improvements? Can we always do things a little better? We certainly can, and we certainly will.
So, I don't believe that our city employees, while on city employee time, should be doing private jobs, no matter who it's for. Whether it's part of the pay-to-play package, or it's just making extra money on the side. That's an issue that should be addressed, and it should come with some discipline for those employees and who directed those employees to do the work. On the other half, with the budget, again, I am not a budget expert, but we do have experts around that can, once elected, can help me with that. But I will tell you this, when you listen to the numbers, you have to make sure you don't just look at projections, which may sound good, you look at actual. And your actual versus your projection, many times are two different things. And so you have to be careful when you get excited based on a projection and you forget looking at the actual.
Thank you. Okay, we have more than one of these two questions, so we'll go ahead and ask them. We'll give you, we'll give you 60 seconds to respond to the first one. You may or may not need the full time. The first one says, will you support the release of the infamous police tapes? What is your opinion on this issue? So this is the issue that will not die. And there has been some dispute between the mayor and the council. Ms. McBride.
Sorry.
I have supported the release of the police tapes and will continue to do so.
Mr. Nichols.
Why wouldn't you want it released? If there's an issue, why not get to the core of it, find it, fix it, and then move on? Because now it's going to just keep coming back on note cards. Every time there's a conversation, this comes up. Let's just get to it. Whatever we find out, we deal with it, we fix it, and we move on.
Mr. Scott.
7 years, now 8 years on council, and we've taken motions and votes on this as president. I'm involved with those decisions that are being made, and I've made myself absolutely clear. Transparency in government is key and the utmost. And legally, that's about all I can say, but you know we're still in it from the city council side.
Mr. Banicki.
I think if you're looking to build trust in your police department, this is absolutely something that has to be made public and transparent. You know, these were conversations that took place on police department lines. I guarantee you, if we looked into the police department manual, similar to when I worked at the St. Joe County Jail, it's going to tell you that anticipate that every line is being recorded because they're allowed to be, because you're using work lines. So I don't see what the issue is, but of course, we're still waiting for judges to make this decision because the mayor has been obstructing it for so long.
Ms. Niezgodski.
Yes, I believe we should be transparent about the issue before the community can move on and fully move on, if they are able to relieve. And I don't know all the legal language that's going on with this whole thing, but if they can release them, they absolutely should release them. Have a discussion about it and face it one-on-one as a community together. Because until we do that, I don't believe that we are able to move on. So I'm saying yes.
Okay, this question may test your skills in diplomacy. It came in online, and again on a note card it says, which of the mayoral candidates would you work best with? Ms. McBride.
Any of them. I will be professional and supportive of the, as I have been with the current administration. I will do the same because it is my job as the elected official to work in the best interest for the city, for the neighbors, and for this community. So no matter who the mayor is, I will be able to work with him or her.
Mr. Scott.
Are they going to be able to work with me? No, it's very imperative, and this is just being on the council for everybody. The first thing you need to do is build that rapport with whoever is mayor. I have a very good rapport with everybody who's running, from just about everybody. I don't know two of them that were at the forum. But have that relationship. I think that goes a long, long way. It goes a long, long way with the current mayor that I meet with and past mayors that I've met with. And you need to do that. And that is absolutely crucial, that you have a professional built relationship and everybody don't have to agree, but we work together for the betterment of the city. They're running for mayor. That's exactly what they want to do. I'm running for my re-election seat, and that's what I want to do. What's best for South Bend.
Mr. Nichols.
You guys are way too politically correct. I'm going to tell you right now who I support. Whoever gets elected. Because here's the thing, at the end of the day, it's about relationship. And the reason we have branches of government is that we can have checks and balances. So you want to have a great working relationship, but not so close that you're not willing to check them on something they may be doing wrong. But you have to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. And that is the bottom line. So you work with whoever you put in front of you. And because in building relationships is key. That's how I've been able to bring millions of dollars to this county to address health disparities. We've had building relationships. I don't necessarily agree with everything the Indiana State Department of Health does, but by building relationships, you're able to bring resources to this community. And so that would be the same thing as I do on council.
Thank you. We go next to Ms. Niezgodski.
Yes, absolutely. It is important to work together. I believe that working together, you can always do better. That was a slogan of my campaign 4 years ago when I run for the 6th District seat. So I'll work with everybody as long as they'll work with me in the 6th District. No, I'm just kidding. But of course I have to put the plug in for the 6th District because I do care deeply about the district and I want to see some improvements. We've done some good improvements along the Western Avenue corridor, but I believe that we really need to look at building some good affordable housing. I know I've said that again, but it's because I feel so passionate about it for our residents. But yes, I'll work with anybody.
Mr. Banicki.
So I've had the distinct pleasure of working with some of these folks that are running, and the ones that I haven't, other than a couple I've already sat down and had conversations with. I'm excited to work with any of them because at the end of the day, as a council person, it's my job to work with whoever the people of South Bend decide should be the next mayor to get things done for the 6th District and the city as a whole. So I'm going to work with whoever it is. I've led teams of over 100 people when I worked at the jail and teams of over 100 people where I work at currently. So working with people of different backgrounds and different skill sets is something that I've been tasked with for the last decade plus of my life. It is something I look forward to as a member of the council potentially. And the mayor, whoever the mayor may be, will be somebody I'd be more than excited to work with to get things done.
Thank you. We are going to close in the same order we started, moving from stage left to stage right. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to tell you why they deserve your vote.
Well, first I want to start by thanking everybody to come out here for the last 2 hours. I know it's a late night after a work day, so I just appreciate you caring enough about the process to show up. But who's here from the 1st District? I want to thank you all for coming. I appreciate it because, and I'll be right outside to talk to you because I do want to represent you as your 1st District council person. And I feel passionate about the work that I have done and being able to continue doing that work from the legislative side.
Thank you. 8 years on council, you can look at my record and look that I've been proactive in making a difference with that, not only with our city, but within the 1st District. I'm present, I'm out there, I'm meeting with people, I'm passionate about the 1st District, and also I'm persistent. You can ask the mayor's office, you can ask our council members, I'm persistent on getting things done. I hope that I can get your vote. I wish that you would re-elect me so I can continue to serve and continue to do what's best for this 1st District.
Thank you for coming to the 3rd District. You're in the 3rd District. I have 8 schools in my district as well, with 2 of them in colleges. So I am real big with education as well. I want to continue to be consistent. It started with a bus tour, and that bus tour showed the divisiveness and the differences and similarities within the 3rd District. Out of that, we've got Randolph Park. They started excavations today. Ravina Park was upgraded. We have homes being built in the neighborhood, and I just want to keep that momentum, so I ask for your support. Thank you.
So as someone who's been attending council meetings for 5 years, I kind of got the chance to see what the city does well and what the city can do better. It puts me in a unique position as a first-time candidate to have so much experience working with and for things that I care passionately about in the 6th District and the city as a whole. And it gives me a chance to be there the first day and hit the ground running because I know what we're allowed to do and what we can't do as a council, because sometimes people come to us with things that are outside of our scope of work. And I think that gives me the chance to work hard day one for the residents of 6th District.
For me, it's really all about families, unity, and inclusion. I am a businesswoman, and I will be a voice of sense and reason on the council. I want to build our neighborhoods, and that is truly my passion. I see the empty lots in our neighborhoods. I know people say there's trash in the neighborhoods because they're not picking up the empty lots that are in the neighborhoods. I will be a voice of common sense and reason for the 6th district. I want to see it grow. I want it to be a destination where people in the community want to come and live, work, and plan. And that commitment I will make if you give me the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's have a round of